Right.
Alison, we are live.
It feels like forever, Laura, since we were last together. You've been doing a lot of work with Tom recently, haven't you?
Been doing a lot of work with Tom, which has been lovely. It's very nice to be together today.
It's very, very
So I
nice.
think it has been forever.
I know,
Neither of
just
us. Do you think that's sort of like the tricks of time?
I think it's because we've been doing a lot. We've been very busy. I've been busy working on a lovely AI tool, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about, which is coming together very nicely. And you've been very busy launching a whole new initiative as well. So
Hmm.
a lot of development. We'll touch
Yeah.
on both of those as we go.
Well,
And
welcome everybody.
yeah,
And we should probably introduce ourselves because we do have new people today.
a lot
So
of new
yeah,
people.
if you have been here before, of course, very welcome. It's lovely to see you again. If you are new, also very welcome to you.
Yeah. So who we are, I'm Alison, founder of Kakora and founder really alongside you of our subscription service, which has been running for 5 years now.
Mhm.
And I have historically looked after the quant part of the study. But as Tom has come and sort of helped there, then I've been moving, as I say, on to some AI developments. Laura, what's been your role on the development of the subscription?
So yes, I'm Laura. Historically, I've looked after the qualitative side of our big study, and like you, I'm now kind of moving into new ways. I think for us to help clients and bring our message to the fore. So yes, we are going to run you through today. We've got a great session, I think, really, really good. We're going to do some thinking about customer centricity more broadly. We're going to start to dissect determination and two big forces, I think, within determination.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of ground to be covered. And before we do that, Laura, again, a lot of people don't know Kokoro, what we do. And I think there are two sides to our business. One is kind of this subscription always on service. And there we aim really to be continually scanning the horizon, understanding kind of all of the sort of tectonic plates, and how consumer needs are changing over time. And that kind of is like heads up
Mhm.
for our clients. We then take individual briefs and put those under a microscope.
Yeah, absolutely. This is much more a look at a particular business or a particular brand kind of in the world, a kind of microscope, I guess, on a particular business question, a kind of more bespoke answers to specific business needs.
Yeah. And I guess if we were to stand back from both sides of our business, what we're really trying to do is help businesses be more customer centric. And we don't do that just because it's a nice thing to do. We enjoy doing it, of course. But actually, the unlock in terms of financial performance is enormous for brands that achieve customer centricity.
Yeah, completely. I mean, you can see it there. I mean, this is a study from Deloitte, but you can see similar studies report, huge figures in terms of kind of, profit and growth and all of those sorts of things. We're often really drawn to that absenteeism figure. Gallup did a similar study, actually reported slightly higher, less absenteeism. But I think that just daring to show up to work, that sort of boldness that it can really trickle down, I think, throughout teams if businesses are really customer
Yeah,
centric.
being able to contribute to the
Yeah.
narrative, and really anticipate, I think, what customers are going to want in the
Mm.
future. So we know that being customer centric is important. Laura, we've got three stats here. And these are scary stats,
Yeah.
aren't they? We asked actually at our last webinar, 400 people gave us the response, whether their company had nailed customer centricity. A whopping 3% said that that was the case. We've got other studies because we thought that's crazy. We've looked at other studies and they're very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, we thought, do we just have a group of people who've got very, very, very high standards and have been tough on themselves? But I think when you put it against the rest of this context, you see that, wow, customer obsession is something that trips off the tongue, but it's very, very, very tough to really achieve, and very few businesses truly manage to deliver on it.
Yeah, so customer first, absolutely. The say, but the do is
Yeah.
a long way off there. I guess this kind of puts into context this chart here, isn't it? So this is government data. It's the amount of money that businesses either spend on management consultancy or the white line on advertising slash market research. And I think this is really telling, isn't it? That if we believe kind of money reflects kind of the do, over time, businesses have actually spent less time doing customer listening
Mm.
and responding to customers than they do management consultants. So there is maybe the evidence of one of the whys of why customer businesses are not as customer centric as they would like to be.
Yeah, of course, it's difficult to lean into customers. They're sort of more kind of chaotic in how you might kind of speak to and understand them versus, say, a management consultancy. But I do think this chart is sobering that in a world whereby we talk about customer obsession, it is absolutely, we are not putting our money where our mouth is.
Yeah, management consultancy obsession would be
Mm.
more evidenced on there. I think here's the thing though, Laura, that it's actually really, really hard to be customer obsessed because customers are difficult. Consumers are difficult to read, to understand, to predict the behavior of because we're not rational beings. And I think more fundamentally, we can't always say the thing that really is going to motivate us.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to think we're rational, don't we? But really, kind of, we go with our gut, and of course, that causes us kind of all sorts of challenges, particularly for people trying to understand us. We love this quote. Often, when we put it up, it gets
A lot of
conferences and stuff, and gets a
photographs.
lot of kind of photographs and things. Really beautiful quote. The truth of a thing is in the feel of it, not the think of it. Of course, Stanley Kubrick
It's the
means a lot to
local,
us,
yeah.
the local. But yes, a brilliant quote, I think, and an important moment to just kind of remember that and keep in mind. And we have really taken the spirit of that in today's insights that we're
I
going to
think we
share.
have, because we are absolutely going to cover the think of it, but we're also going to predict the feel of it.
Mhm.
And as we say, the feel of it, I think, is the unlock for brands. It is the hidden secrets, isn't it, that really can leverage great growth. And that quote is something that we've sort of used as our guiding light for around a decade now. It used to be printed on the back of every single report that we sent out. And so we've hard baked that knowledge into the way that we go about our work. And so in terms of our subscription business, we adopt some principles, and it is worth just reflecting on these, Laura, that allow us to unlock the feel of it, not just the think of it.
hmm Well, yes, absolutely. The first is longitudinal tracking, both qualitatively and quantitatively. You are never actually asking people to report the size of something, whether it's changing, whether it's moving. We are always revealing whether it's changing and where it might be moving to. And that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, we use implicit responses, so we don't ask people to say, we're able to kind of get them to respond to it very quickly. Use lots of different techniques really to get to people's subconscious. I think we interpret it with a very, very senior team. We recognize that really predicting the future, and what we're aiming always to do is predict the next 18 months, is a very, very difficult thing. In some ways, Laura, and maybe I would say this, but I think it's harder than a trends agency because we all know certain things over time are going to be the thing, but actually sort of unpicking how it's going to play out in the sort of messy 6 to 18 months, I think is really difficult.
Mm.
And the final thing we're increasingly doing is kind of using AI behind the scenes, but also hopefully quite soon, quite overtly, to help people activate it against. And all of this is on a bedrock of a huge amount of a mountain of information.
Yeah, we're at over 500,000 people, well over.
Yeah.
So we're knocking on the door of 600,000 people. So enormously robust.
Yeah. So it is worth reflecting on what we do think customer centricity is. What is the end point? So we kind of begin with the end in mind. And this is a quote here by Jeff Bezos, who is renowned, isn't it, for customer obsession.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that sense of it being kind of totally ingrained, a kind of a culture that it absolutely has to come from within, that it's about kind of growing an instinct that it just becomes second nature. I spoke to somebody recently and they talked about it being like brushing your teeth, that kind of level of ingrained.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think it's beyond sort of evidence-based, isn't it? It is intuitively sat within
Yeah.
everybody rather than something you always have to look up.
Mm.
And this is your new thing, isn't it? Because basically, at the beginning of the year, when we saw the figures, just 3% of the people who engage with us believe their businesses are genuinely customer centric. We kind of wanted to understand more, didn't we? Wanted to understand kind of what are the blockages, because if we could understand that, we could get better about our work. And actually, it's morphed into a podcast now.
Yes, it has. It's really exciting. I'm really enjoying these conversations. We have just launched, if you follow that QR code, it will take you to our version on Spotify, but you can find us on YouTube and on Apple Podcasts as well. We've launched one podcast. We've got another one coming next week. Really beautiful conversations with some really interesting people, understanding really, why are we at this 3%? What are the challenges? Where are the wins? What's hurting and what's hard? And I really hope that they are kind of illuminating for people. We've had a little bit of nice feedback from a few
They are
clients.
brilliant, Laura. Like you gave me the link, a sneak peek, didn't you? I read it after a hard day in the office. I was feeling actually a bit miserable as I left the office. I got home and it was just like a reminder, A, of how brilliant you are, but just how important our role and how difficult our roles are in the organizations that we work in. So I
Yeah.
think it's definitely
Well,
worth
hey.
a listen.
I mean, actually doing the conversation things gives you, I think there is this real sense of, what we do is such a craft. And there, I think so. I think that people, I really hope people will enjoy listening to it.
Yeah.
You asked me what to reflect on a couple of things that have been coming up, and I think that the big thing I think is that it's a kind of constant journey, and there are a couple of things that people have reflected on, but two really sort of came to the forefront of my mind. One is the constant battle against a kind of sample of one, this kind of fake idea of empathy that kind of stakeholders and other people can think they're in touch with the rest of the world because of course they are out there in the world, and so it might be a reflection on their wife or their teenager or their experience kind of last Saturday. We all are, consumers. But of course, that's what we need to kind of rally against. There is enormous empathy gap. We are not going to share more on that today, but we have talked a lot about it in the past. So rallying against that has been a really big theme of these podcasts. And the second one is something you really advocate for, which is seeing the whole, taking a step back. And actually, if you still can't see it, you probably need to take another big step back, actually appreciating all the moving parts. If you're getting to a point where you want break after break after break after break, more and more and more data, more and more questions, it's probably getting muddy. This is wrong. That's a bias you're kind of falling into. You need to step back and see the whole and the confidence, I think, to do that and to encourage other people to see it that way too.
Yeah, I think that too many breaks when people ask for all of that follow-up work. They just want to avoid kind of making
Making a
a
decision.
decision. And of course, our life is ambiguous, and so we've got to force ourselves to kind of move through that. But yeah, I love the kind of network effect. I think once you understand all of the kind of implications, knock-on effects, you can start to really predict what's going to happen in your neck of the wood. So, Laura, that's the case for customer centricity. I mean, I'm guessing most people here are kind of bought into the need and probably somewhat exasperated that they can't always make it happen within their organizations. What we're going to do now is sort of segue into kind of the state of the nation, where we are, big macro kind of view of the mood of the nation and some of the kind of really important moving parts within that. So the first chart we've got here is net optimism. Very granular read here over time from 2020, the beginning of the pandemic. It has been a roller coaster. I think when we look at this chart, we could agree that it's sort of fairly firm here and now.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on kind of where we have been over the last 5 years, you definitely see that it feels firm and it's on kind of reasonably good territory. There are certainly points over the last few years where we would have been kind of high-fiving ourselves, having a glass of wine if we were seeing these sorts of figures. So it's in a kind of okay space.
Yeah, and that's intriguing in its own right, isn't it? Because we're going to go on to show that the world is still not okay,
Mm.
really, but we've found some okayness in our own world. And that, of course, is part of that determination
Mhm.
that we will reflect on. So that is sort of the glass half full view of net optimism. On this chart here, we just reflect on the last 5 years. So the turquoise here are all of those individual bars that we looked at on the previous chart, sort of grouped up to a year view. When we look at those, Laura, and look at the yellow period, a very long yellow period
Mm.
before that, there still is a gap.
Yeah, we're still a long way from normal. We are adrift of where we have been, absolutely. And as you say, that is a sense of there are a lot of curveballs. Life still isn't normal for people.
Yeah. So as we moved into 2025, we drew this picture, didn't we, of the world that consumers are trying to navigate. And on one side, we talked about there's a storm, just, massive, monumental things happening, huge sort of chaos, if you like. And alongside that, there's sort of nothingness at the same time.
I mean, the blend of these two forces is very challenging. I think one's got kind of endless pace, curveballs, what could come next, a sense of worry, a sense of fear, and the other's got, lacking in energy, lacking in pace. Yeah, a sense of worry, but more because things are kind of sliding and slipping than there's a sense that something's kind of chasing us. So very kind of opposing pressures, and we can really see this year, but way beyond this year.
100%. I think people often think we're talking in the present tense on things like this. We believe that's kind of the setup for the foreseeable. And certainly, Trump is there for 4 years. That's going to have an implication in terms of the storm on the left-hand side. But we know those things on the right-hand side are going to take a long time to resolve. So that is for the foreseeable. We continue to live in those unprecedented times. What that means for consumers is they keep on their toes, they keep alert, they keep fairly vigilant about what is happening in the world around them. Now we're going to go on to talk about they try not to let it get them down and they intentionally sort of tune out, but they keep one eye open and just reflect on followed the news there, that chart on the right hand side.
Yeah, we're at a real kind of sustained peak, I think, of following that news. We've seen it over the last 5 years, but we really see it kind of steady at the moment. And I think that's absolutely this sense of kind of constant vigilance. Who knows what's coming next? Give yourself every advantage to see it as early as possible. And so our eyes are kind of glued to it.
Yeah.
Stay alert.
And it's the equivalent, isn't it, of the lion on the African plain with a human, and like the human is aware that that is over there. And so we're just keeping aware of these things happening, alert to potential danger. Within all of that, though, we're in a position, I think, where on average consumers have sort of sought an element of self-control to get their world just feeling slightly less topsy-turvy. And it comes under three areas, really. One is around financial security, one is around just health and well-being, just feeling a little bit stronger. And through a combination of those two, grounded in a sense of control is just to find wins where that is possible. And when we talk about determination, in the first instance, we're really talking about those areas.
Absolutely.
So, Laura, terrified about my finances on the left hand side, just talk us through what's gone on there.
Well, I mean, we've had a very interesting journey, I think, on it. You can see that real soar up during 2022 as kind of cost of living hit. There were lots of talk about kind of energy bills. It was a very sort of scary time for people. Ever since then, it's been sort of slowly kind of coming off, and we sort of find ourselves in a bit of a kind of mid-table point now. And I think so much of that is down to people's sensation of what's going on. We've kind of learned what works. We've tried a lot of different things to control our money. We've talked a lot about that, a lot of different tactics. And I think we've kind of grown in confidence around what really works, that we aren't kind of blindsided, that we've got one eye on it, more than one eye on it, and we're doing better.
Yeah, of course. Inflation has eased, but prices have, of course, remained high because they're not into deflation. And we've learned how to deal with it. So we're slightly less wobbled by our finances. The second very significant thing we've experienced over the last year is we've taken control not just of our money, but also of our kind of mental state as well and our physical state. We give two examples here. One is around eating too much. That's a metric around bad habits that's come off. The other one is just actually going to the gym, but we might look at walking or, outdoor exercise and running, things like that. And that would have improved over time. So this is sort of making myself as strong as possible to compete, to cope with those tectonic changes around us.
And it absolutely makes us feel strong in the moment, in the days. There's absolutely a sense that we're making good choices, that we're in control, that we're kind of moving forward. And then in the weeks and months, there's real evidence that we're getting kind of stronger and feeling kind of good. So this is absolutely a sense of kind of armoring myself.
Absolutely. So the third kind of box we talked about was just finding wins where we can. And so we found a win in actually feeling a little bit better. So this is a scale of kind of, have I been kind of poorly sick, like poorly with a short-term thing or a long-term thing? And this is the flip side. Actually, no, I felt okay this week. And we've really seen as we've moved through this year, that's come away from last year's trend line, huge sample sizes that we're
Mm.
looking at 2,000 people every single week. So the win of those better habits is just feeling a little bit better.
Yeah, and all the kind of buoyancy that comes with that sensation, a sense of kind of less friction, is important for people.
Yeah. So just remind everybody, financial stability for myself, kind of armoring up for myself and finding wins where I can for myself. There is a lot of me in all of that at the moment. And I think it's important to acknowledge that because I think it's important that brands reflect that. We talked about this at the beginning of the year, isn't it? Does that come from a point of selfishness or is it just survival? It's the smart thing to do. And really, we've come down on the side. On whole, it is about survival, isn't it? So, chart on the left hand side is I'm keeping an eye on the world news. We've seen that, but I'm trying to worry about me, focus on me. And Laura, we can see it on those personal priorities on the right hand side.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so telling, isn't it? You've chosen sort of two lines there to represent kind of me and the world, my work-life balance versus sustainability and the planet. And we see that kind of big switch going on and then kind of continuing to grow apart. And absolutely, this is a sense of while it is storming, I have just got to make sure that I keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the outtake for brands is forget me at your peril. I'm not really in the mood to put other people ahead of myself. I have got a lot of pain and I feel I need that resolving. And we've seen that play through. People will narrate this, of course, Laura, in terms of I need to be strong to help other people. I need to prioritize my well-being.
Yeah, this is a sense of kind of filling our own cup before being able to help others. As you say, I think it's difficult. It's sort of a challenging thing to talk about, but that is where people are on a sense of actually I've managed to buffer this storm while focusing on myself. I am important. We will be overly drawn to messages that talk to that.
Talk about me. And I think
Mm.
we've got some numbers there, haven't we, about diversity, inclusivity. Too much focus, tick box in a way, because there's a sensation that no one is prioritizing somebody exactly like me. And I think the final build on this is just at a macro level, even at a country level, we want to put the UK first.
Mm.
We ahead of the rest of the world. We see it through a growth in the number of people who are saying the government should prioritise immigration, reduce unemployment, cut benefits, get people back to
Mm.
work, and also kind of armour up in terms of our defences as well. All of those very significantly up on the year, yet when we look at the average of all priorities, much more kind of stable. And of
Mhm.
course, we see that play through into Reform UK voting as well. So, big macro situation, there's a world of storm, there's slump on the other side that's hard to navigate. I've got to look after myself. So, it's quite a me focused time through a sense of survival. We want to stable up from finances, from our health, and find any wins that we can. Okay, that nicely takes us on to a section on follow the money. Now, Laura, this section perhaps is the think of the
Mhm.
situation, isn't it? And why is money so important to think about?
Well, people have only got so much money. It is a limiting factor, isn't it? Of course, but I think it is so useful when we look at predicting things, whatever we're predicting, whether we're sitting down to look at the trends for the year ahead, whether we're looking at Christmas predictions. We always start with where's the money at, what can we see, because it is such an indicator of what we are going to see happen, what shifts are happening.
Yeah, it's like an implicit conjoint,
Yeah.
isn't it, to be able to do that? Okay, so we're going to start thinking about how vulnerable people feel about their money, and then we're going to make, I think, some firm predictions about what we think people will do as a result of that level of
Mhm.
concern about their money. So Laura's already talked about the slide that we're slightly less concerned about our own finances. the intriguing thing is we continue to be wary about the sort of situation for the UK economy. So, seen quite a significant growth back in terms of concerns around recession. And you can see in terms of that line, it's sort of sitting above average really
Mm.
for the last 5 years. So, we're feeling better about our money because of the things we've done to protect ourselves, not because we think we're living in buoyant times. So, an important sort of frame of reference there. Now, we've had reason to worry about our own economy, but right here, right now, it's interesting that the ascendant fears around the economy is actually at a more global scale. And really, we've got one man, I think, to blame for that.
Yeah, completely. I mean, at the start of this year, we had really high endorsement of that sense that it's going to be a rocky year with Trump as president. But it's almost been another one of those moments whereby people, are asking kind of, are we in a movie? Can you believe it? I'm sort of both not surprised and completely shocked at the same time. So yes, of course, that has caused a real rumble and a real kind of worry about global economy.
Yeah, and I think we're specifically worried that it's going to kind of push
Yeah.
prices up a little bit as well. I think the other thing that is playing out is sort of our feelings towards interest rates. So, left hand side, Laura, just talk through the left hand side because it's a really interesting example of loss aversion and how it influences us.
Yeah, completely. This is awareness of the Bank of England interest rates announcement, and you can see that we've mapped them by whether they've risen, held, or fallen. I think there's a few interesting biases playing out almost beautifully on that chart. First of all, we notice what moves. If it rises or falls, we spot it, but we spot a rise way faster and way more than we spot a fall, and that absolutely is loss aversion.
Yeah, we see the threat more than we see
Mm.
the possibility of a
Mhm.
benefit of them coming down. And that's played out exactly on the right hand side as well, isn't it? When we ask the personal impact of things going up or things coming down, we put almost twice the weight on the kind of bad thing happening than the possibility of good thing happening. And they are exactly the maths that is sort of quoted time and time again. So the thing around interest rates is the sting of the bad sticks around way more than the benefit of the future. So as they come down, it will be slow to respond to it. And then I think the final really important thing around money is there is a suspicion that this government is going to do things that's going to make life harder, and particularly for people they've talked about with broad shoulders, they're going to they take more of the strain. But actually, more recently, we've seen them not protect people who maybe haven't got such broad shoulders as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly with something like NI increases, we've seen that come from, a reasonably kind of maybe abstract concept for people to something that feels kind of really real here and now. Businesses talking about it, seeing differences in maybe how many people they're recruiting, where the freeze is, actually are there restructures, all of those sort of things, what's happening with kind of pay review. So a lot of moments, I think, whereby it has really felt like, people who would see themselves as just kind of, average ordinary feeling, this could come squeeze me.
Yeah. So this leads to the question, doesn't it? We're wary of growth. We're worried about what Trump's doing, what that's doing to the global economy, because we will be impacted by that. We're not seeing the benefits. We're unlikely to see the benefits of interest rates, perceive them in the way that we felt all of the pain in the past, and we're worried about what Rachel Reeves might do. So the important question for us to answer firstly is how are people going to respond to that?
Mhm.
And so we're going to predict what we think people are going to be doing over the next sort of 6 to 12 months. So the first thing, and it's playing out already, is because we've sort of got a grip of the situation, we understand, we're, we're sufficiently wary, we're not so blindsided by all of this stuff going on to us that we dare to think a bit more about our finances and do a
Mm.
bit more planning. So we're just going to be less ostrich than we were at the peak of the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of facing into things much more, and I think that is such a more powerful position to come from, a much more kind of confident positioning, isn't it? We know that that kind of feels good, and I think that's why we can see that terrified about finances kind of really coming down because we have got one eye on the future, and why we can see recessionary worries increase, and yet we kind of think, no, I've kind of buffered myself. I've faced into this. I'm going to be ready.
Yeah, and the really important thing is we are ready in terms of shoring up our savings at the moment. So
Yeah.
that's good for us. It makes us feel in control. Of course, that's a very challenging climate for brands that want us to spend that money. And so we've got a chart there, haven't we? We've got over £5,000 in savings. We've seen that grow very significantly. But as that has grown, our inclination to continue to spend has not eased. So we want to keep a grip on these savings. So another example of loss aversion.
Yes, absolutely. We want to keep that pot that we've grown. The idea of spending it feels like losing, feels like sort of evaporating our hard work.
So we're going to continue to want to save. Now, a really intriguing thing is happening around savings. This chart here looks at our desire to save versus spend across each of these savings groups. And what we're seeing is the biggest growth in the desire to save is actually happening amongst people who've got more money, got more savings. Now, that exactly is the endowment effect or
Yes.
at play. But the thing for these people who've got more money is they are looking to the future and thinking, if I save now, I can do good stuff in the future that the government's not going to do for me. And so I can have a happy retirement, even though the government's not going to be able to support people in retirement so much. And also, if I save now, I can help my children out, acknowledging the fact that it's increasingly hard for a child to buy a house.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with both of those, you get this moment whereby people are growing their savings, and then we're seeing that I might not have to choose between those two things. This unlocks kind of double possibility, in a way.
Yeah, so drawn to savings and a lot of saving happening amongst big savers. Um, Laura, because richer people are basically choosing to do quite a lot of saving at the moment, there's quite a lot of change in behaviours amongst what we would call mass affluent
Mm.
as a group. So much so that we decided to do a mini series just looking at mass affluence.
Yes, so this is a mini series. It exists kind of separate to our core study, and it has been fascinating to delve into this group of people. We have collected a lot of these people over the last 5 years in our study, so we have an enormously robust sample of them, and they're normally kind of eye-watering to reach. We visit them on a quarterly basis, but I think the influence, we always knew this group of people were influential, but the influence this group have is astounding. And I think the sorts of brands that have been choosing to kind of buy into this has been illuminating as well, because I just think there's such a huge proportion of consumer spend, this group of people.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of saving going on. So the flip side of a lot of saving going on is we're going to continue to trim and be very careful in our
Yeah.
spending. On the left hand side, there's nice evidence that basically, if you think the country is not on the right tracks, you don't spend on discretionary things. And
Mm.
so, all of those turquoise bars on the left hand side, through the eyes of people who think the UK is on the wrong track, which is a net of people at this moment in time, much less likely to be buying all those discretionary areas. So, we're going to see continued trimming.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a moment where that feels sensible, doesn't it? It is shoring us up. It is kind of retaining that armor to kind of double think, be careful, be sensible, rein it in and be cautious.
So less spending on things, but also less spending on
Mm.
socializing. And so, what are we seeing on socializing?
I think a really interesting picture. We saw a kind of flip in terms of socializing. Whenever we've seen kind of money worries peak, whether that was kind of the recent budgets or at other points over the course of this study. And of course, kind of socializing is in many ways like signing a blank check, which feels very, very challenging when we're feeling kind of cautious. And what we've seen is that people are almost just quite happy to let things drift a little bit. Let's just spread them out, rather than every other week. Let's make it kind of monthly thing. It's not necessarily a conscious thing. This is us just sort of writing ourselves, but we have seen all of those more casual sort of social events kind of come off. The thing that is kind of holding steady, I think, is events, calendar events. One, they are a moment in time. You either do it then or you don't. But I think also there's a savviness to these. Everybody kind of lives a little bit higher around these sorts of moments. So it's a sensible move to spend. We get a lot of cues that, yeah, go for it. Whereas I think at other moments, it's easy to just say, maybe next weekend.
Yeah, the time boundness of them makes them a thing. Okay, so that's sort of we're saving, we're cutting back on physical things, on socializing. I think another important thing that's happening is we're learning to value kind of a lifestyle, a way of living over kind of physical things, assets. And so, really telling chart on the left hand side, I've achieved work life balance. The full statement is, and want to continue having this a really very consistent move towards that over the last 5 years.
Yeah, completely kind of keeps growing, and that sense of kind of flexibility absolutely kind of coming to the fore there. I think for so many people, this is about feeling that kind of works in check, but also that we get enough time just to be just to be us, kind of return to our lives and be very kind of present. I think when we're doing that, and that flexibility has been game changing for people. Maybe how the school run is, or getting some exercise in during the day, or just what home life can look and feel like.
Yeah. Okay, and then just finishing off, then I think another implication of kind of where we're at, that sort of storm, the stagnation, is that a sort of a sense that we're okay where we're at. Our house is good enough. It's big enough. No point sort of stretching ourselves, upsetting the kind of status quo, kind of making ourselves feel vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. A sense that actually, if we just stick here, that is going to save us kind of a huge amount of money. The fees associated with moving are just kind of colossal. But I think almost, yeah, that sense of, right, we're just going to kind of love where we are.
Yeah. And love where we are involves doing more to the place that we are.
Mm.
So, two metrics there again, huge samples, done DIY in the last week, done some gardening in the last week. They've both been relatively sort of buoyant for
Mm.
some time on previous year. It's important here, Laura, that often this is quite small projects. It's not investing huge amounts of money.
No, I think it's, a big change in feel.
Yeah.
This could be relaying something out. This could be kind of quite a kind of budget transformation, but actually the difference it makes to how I feel in the space, or maybe how we use the space, or how excited we feel for summer is, really, really, really quite sizable. And talking kind of earlier about finding the wins where we can, this absolutely is that. I mean, the moment we can stand back and kind of ta-da, like it does feel great.
Yeah, and of course there's the whole IKEA effect, sort of doing it
I
yourself
did it,
as
therefore it's
well.
brilliant.
Therefore, it is brilliant. Okay, the final thing we want to talk about is holidays. So we think fewer holidays during this period of time, just stretching out, I think, the period of time between your big
Mm.
holidays, and therefore putting more emphasis on staycation and the work-life balance that comes with a stay at home, the sort of perfect rest and relaxation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a huge unlock, this decision. And I think, we're finding ourselves so much in sort of choice paralysis here. People really are kind of, wide-eyed at some of the kind of associated costs with going on holiday. I think they're either kind of maybe reaching for familiar things and really noticing price differences and feeling quite frozen there, or thinking, could we do something completely different? But of course, that opens up a world of possibility. You get this real kind of just choice paralysis.
Yeah.
And of course, this squares a big circle if we just kind of say no, and see the UK kind of slightly differently, or days out, or days at home, or garden things that we've been doing differently.
And you don't have to stretch your interval between holidays too much more to make
Yeah.
really quite a difference as well. So we want to return to our favourite quote here. The truth of a thing is the feel of it, not the think of it. Laura, I think we've reflected there a lot on the think of it. I think a lot of people would be able to narrate that themselves, say, consciously kind of making some of those choices in life. So it's useful to know, and they're good building blocks, but it's only half the job done, I think, isn't it? Because if we look at this next chart, what we really determine is that people are making some of those improvements. They're feeling better, they're feeling slightly more optimistic than they were, but it's not completely leading to happiness.
Mhm.
And the evidence for that is on this chart here. This is the top 5 things that I hide from other people. We look at this year and a year ago. So some things have improved, like how I look. That comes back to kind of
Mm.
what we're eating and the exercise. Fearful about making ends meet. That's kind of come back as I've improved my financial kind of stability. But in number one place now is how behind I feel in life.
Mm.
That's now in number one and it's not shifted on the year. And I think that is, Laura, because we've resolved a lot of the thinky things, but it doesn't leave us feeling completely moved, changed, transformed. And that's the feeling that often we really want to experience in life.
I think that's the moment that we've really got something to show for ourselves, isn't it? It's the me this year rather than the me of a year ago or the year before that. It's a sense of the stories that we're able to tell and kind of how we feel about ourselves. If we take it back to a DIY kind of example, it's like when you rectify something you didn't even really realize was going to be a problem, and now we're going to start on the painting or whatever. I think it is that sense of I've not really moved anywhere. I've not really got anything solid to kind of point at.
Yeah, the moment of transformation, absolutely. So nice little graphic here, and then we're gonna sort of talk through this for the rest of the time. So I think where we're at the moment is through sheer grit and determination, we are making some progress. It's very, very grounded in control and it's quite thinky. What we want to do is to move to a slightly more fluid, transformational place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these are kind of these gains are almost kind of secret weapons, I think,
Unlocks,
aren't
yeah.
real unlocks because these aren't the things that people are kind of thinking about and necessarily kind of able to talk about, but they are things that we can really reveal are the kind of next stage. And I think the truth is if we grit in, that is a story of survival. But I don't think people are going to feel any differently as a result of that. We really need to see something different. We need to see a step change. We need to kind of feel slightly kind of transformed, like we're kind of moving forward in our own world. So
Yeah.
we are going to talk through those four big unlocks.
Yeah, and would another way of thinking about that sort of some survival to winning or surviving to thriving?
Yeah, surviving to thrive is
Thriving
a kind
is
of
a
bit of an
strong, yeah,
Instagram
yeah.
kind of. But yes, I think it's along that sort of territory, isn't it? You know, you can check off every single thing on a to-do list and still not feel like you've had a great day. And I think that that is what this is about. This is about a kind of an absolute sensation that I've kind of found something slightly bigger than that. We've found an element of I've surprised myself. I've moved forward. There's been an element of growth and of gain.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the first one. So we've mentioned status quo bias quite a few times in a way, loss aversion. It's all kind of related, isn't it? What we think is that people are slightly too attached to certain aspects of control, and that will stop them moving forward. So we think there's a big opportunity for brands to help people just kind of stretch their zone of comfort, if you like,
Mm.
um, so that they do experience a few more unexpected moments in their life. You put up here about achieving work-life balance. People want it for certain, don't they?
Mm.
Very reluctant to go back to the office, being, told that they must do it, and very concerned about it.
Yeah, and I just think I wonder. I think this is quite a kind of bold a bold chart to share, given kind of how much on this we see kind of out there in the world. But are we too obsessed with balance? Is it actually got to a point where it might be kind of hankering us a little bit? We're so kind of obsessed with balance. We almost want balance within kind of a 24-hour period. We want to kind of contain things, and actually moments where we really make progress or we really feel a sense of kind of change and transformation is often kind of imbalance. If we go back to that DIY example, it's the day you sort of have a really big argument and end up finishing something at 9 p.m. that the next day you think, whoa, we really did a lot. Absolute kind of imbalance there at the heart of that. And so I wonder if we're just slightly too obsessed with balance.
Well, because you're absolutely right, isn't it? Like imbalance is energy, isn't it?
Mm.
It's things rubbing molecules, rubbing up against one another. So too much control, it stops. It's sort of like creates friction, I think, really. We give an example here, don't we? We've been very, very restrained on seeing other people. You said it's a blank check. So much so that when we do it, we kind of like really want to overcorrect the next
Yeah,
week.
absolutely. We get out there and see people, and then we absolutely kind of rein it in and want to protect the quieter life. Our kind of our dial for this has been kind of over calibrated, recalibrated in the wrong direction. We see sort of total overcorrection, I think, to these sorts of things, and that is a sensitivity to imbalance that I think could be harboring us.
So in a way, we're just wanting to coax people out,
Mm,
create a little bit of
mm,
bravery, inject a little bit of mayhem within life,
mm.
because we know the people who get out and do actually get a much more positive view of the world.
Absolutely. And this is a brilliant example of kind of motivation comes kind of after action. We do these things and therefore we're kind of enticed to do them more. But it is important, I think, persuade us to participate. Let's lean into a little bit of imbalance because we gain an awful lot from it. But at the moment we're kind of quite fearful of it.
Yeah. So how can brands help us here?
Well, I think the thing that we want to cling on to, grit into, is if I say no, that's an act of control. And I think really the unlock here that we can't talk about is brands helping us make precision yeses, really sort of choiceful decisions, and knowing that that could be kind of quite a challenging, kind of messy space to sit. This is about sort of first steps. This is about knowing where to kind of just push yourself gently. I don't think this is about kind of anything kind of too
It's not quite
radical.
the diving off the platform.
But I think that small steps could feel like
Yeah,
diving
yeah,
off of a
no,
platform
yeah.
when, when we just see, the neighbours and then we think, oh, we've got to stay inside for 2 weekends. So I think, helping us readdress that. I think spending with intent, actually letting spending not be seen as reckless, but be seen as strategic, be seen as investment in yourself, I think is really important.
Yeah, that action beats perfection as
Mm,
well is interesting, isn't it? When you're so worried about making a mistake, you can actually not do anything. Yeah. Okay, second sort of territory then is just dream a little bit because it's exhausting. And we come on to look at the stats around that, isn't it? Living such a thinky, sensible
mhm,
existence. And sometimes when you have a dream that you can walk towards, you can kind of cope with a few knocks along the way because you know what you're doing it for.
mhm.
And we are exhausted. We've been very exhausted for 5 years and we continue to just have the same levels of exhaustion.
Yeah, and it exists amongst almost kind of every cohort. And I think here is actually, if we just continue on this track, we're going to be no less exhausted. You can only get so much better at kind of being vigilant and thinking about money and thinking about all of these things. We need something new to kind of focus on to kind of re-energize us, I think.
Yeah, and so really the opportunity is to help us understand how we can win because we are looking for wins, but how can we just win a bit more often? And surprising, I think, data on the left-hand side. We've spent the whole of the last 5 years reassessing because the pandemic came along, cost of living crisis came along, yet we are at peak reassessing. And that's partly because we're facing into kind of our situation and sort of thinking our way through it. But I think in that thinking, there's an opportunity to help people dream a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that we really need to start seeing a step change from just be kind to yourself in that reassessing and actually be a bit bolder. This is more about kind of coach yourself, kind of see a new possibility. Maybe there are moments to be a bit kind of tougher, aim for another kind of 10%, kind of push a little bit more, I think, rather than just maybe reassessing in quite a kind of cozy, almost kind of passive way that we have been doing so far.
Yeah. Because, and it is a very important because when we ask people about this statement, you get one life, make it yours. Not only is this one of the most endorsed statements on this list of attributes, it is growing over
Mm,
time, isn't it? And it's growing over time because I think people have seen so many of the last 5 years as wasted on one level or
mhm.
another. And so when you really see high endorsement for you get one life, make it yours, yet really what we're doing is wanting to put money in our bank account and not spend it, that doesn't square.
It absolutely doesn't. The 2025 year is going to be no different to the 2024 year, except for when you log into your banking account. Like
Yeah.
that isn't a kind of sense of having kind of moved forward, of having kind of milestones and things that really define kind of big periods in our lives.
And so how can brands help here?
I think this is a sense that we really do need to see some stretch. That where's the word ambition kind of gone? Where is it in all of this? We need to sort of bring it back, kind of welcome it in, I think, and have a kind of sense of kind of really making things count. I think, you matter, your perspective matters, what you want matters. So chase that. Don't worry about bucking the trend in a world where everybody talks about balance. Don't worry about being in balance. There could be some real kind of good there. I think this is about proof. I think this is about marker points. I think this is about almost kind of redefining some elements around kind of success and achievement.
Very good. So, third area, reconnect me with my crowd. So, this really comes from the point of view of we have stripped back our socializing, we've demonstrated it earlier. This is another kind of visualization, isn't it?
Mm.
Met up with somebody in the last week. The dark line is the sort of more recent times, and it's really been down ever since that the first budget really came off at that point for the Labour government. Of course, in not seeing other people, we've got the control over our savings. And this is what we're doing as a result, isn't it? We're connecting in non-physical ways.
Yeah, I know, and I think that this has almost like mystified us a little bit. I think this can scratch kind of similar itches. You can listen into conversations, you can hear new perspectives, you can feel the pace and energy of a game or a movie, or even get that sense of progress by moving on to another season. This isn't the real senses that we're looking for, but I think that this is what we've come to kind of plug the gap with.
Absolutely. And so when we look at this chart here, which is looking forward to socializing in the yellow line versus the turquoise have actually got together with family and friends, there's just a growing gulf between those two lines.
There really is, and I think, we often talk about, humour, memes, things you see going around on social media. There's always insight and truth in them. The fact that we're so happily laughing along to, ha ha, got out the group chat. I mean, that is a major problem. One life, make it yours, and we're just going to endlessly plan something that never quite happens. We want stories, we want something to show for ourselves. I think we're missing a sense that time has flown, but I don't regret a single moment of that time. It felt really, really, really well spent. We need plans that happen.
Yeah, and so some sobering data here, isn't it? I feel emotionally fulfilled in my friendships. Only
It's
just.
not
It's
great.
really not great, is it? I mean, whenever you get an agree lower than the kind of neutral, we know that that's a very muted response. And thoughts on my friendship, well, I don't spend enough time, we've grown apart. I actually do want to see people more in person than I
Mm.
am doing. So, Laura, the upshot really is that people can see that they spend too little time with old friends and too little time making new friends. And of course, friends give us new perspectives, new challenges, help us dream and kind of move forward.
Yeah, they recalibrate things for us, don't they? They bring a sense of kind of freshness, of stretch, that ambition kind of flooding in there as well. And I think always in these moments we come back to, action comes before motivation. We're not kind of fueled enough to realize how much we're really missing this. Although we recognize we spend too little time, I don't think this kind of sparks completely there.
Very good. So, how can brands help?
I think showing us what's constantly adding to our savings is costing us. That life really lives offline, that, energy is contagious. And I think really kind of there are lots of narratives to play to here. Firstly, I really think that person who gets everybody together, who maybe is seen as the slight kind of, I don't want to use the word dull, but dull person in the WhatsApp group is like, so when is it happening and where we go? They're heroes. They really are. They're the ones who are absolutely sort of bucking a trend and making things happen. So message first and make those people kind of feel great about messaging first is important. Beyond that, I think, you aren't going to feel like it, but it is going to be great. It is a real sort of platform to kind of play with. I think just going, actually just being there, beats kind of being there with kind of bells on. That element of kind of low stakes, low fuss, kind of just come as you are, lower the bar, I think, so that people feel like they can go.
Yeah. Okay, so fourth territory we think that is exciting for
Mm.
brands is return my sense of agency. So if we kind of think of the arc of the last few years, we were out of control, blindsided, we've regained control and we are finding some wins, but we've kind of just controlling like feeling in charge of like the thing around us. What I think we want to do is feel like we can move forward. We've got the power, despite all of that going on, to not just accommodate it, which I think we're doing at the moment, but to kind of move forward positively in that new era. And we want to, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we really want to be back to kind of stand that little bit taller, as you say, almost that kind of permission, but also kind of empowerment to really kind of focus on ourselves and find wins for us and ways forward for us.
Yeah. And again, I think it's probably important to ground this that we're not looking really to go off the high
Mm.
diving thing here. It's feeling empowered, free, liberated to do what we want rather than kind of trying to carve out what is possible that we're looking for.
Yeah, completely. I think this is about us feeling in charge, us feeling kind of positive, us feeling sort of buoyant, like we've got a sense of momentum, like we know where we're headed, not about kind of radical kind of transformation.
Yeah. And on this next chart, you say, give me energy, not just empathy.
Mm.
This is kind of a little bit of tough love at the margins.
I think so, absolutely. I think this is a push to discover, to really sort of see what you're in charge of and find a way to move forward. I also think it's about moving from kind of quite a passive energy into a really kind of active one. This isn't about finding the joy in the thing that's already in front of my face. This is about actively kind of chasing joy, being really kind of deliberate and choiceful. How can I make this better? How can I make this more memorable? How can I kind of play with that and find something that we're going to kind of keep talking about for another few weeks, or is going to make everyone want to get together again? Yeah, so I think a lot of kind of be deliberate is important here. This is absolutely about rather than sheltering, like get out there and steer. I think this is about being put in the driving seat and being given some tools in which to do that. I think real straight talking, reminding people that they aren't stuck, that actually today's a great day to start, and actually just quietly getting on with some things could be a really bold move right now. And reminding people, I think, that they've got more choices than they think.
Very good. So, just to summarize then, we think the think of the situation revolves around money, all of those sort of deliberate actions, but we think the brands that will really do well this year are going to play to the feel of where people are at. And the feel of where people are at is they still feel a little bit stuck and they're hiding that from other people. And to become unstuck and feel a sense of progress, we think these four areas are rich territories.
Absolutely.
Very good. So, Laura, how can people get hold of this stuff?
Well, we will send out a note later today, and we will send you the slides and recording if you fill that in. If you want to get them, you can scan this QR code now and fill that in, and we'll make sure that you get slides and recording. If you are a subscriber to our study, you don't need to do any of that. This will land in your inbox later on, along with some exclusive content. Harry's been working on a great video that goes alongside this. But yes, you can get your hands on all the insights that we've shared today.
I would also love to share a link to my question finder,
Oh, right.
which allows people to kind of search our 22,000 questions from the last 5 years and kind of see the sorts of rich information we've got on all manner of topics. And that is very ready to go, maybe tomorrow.
Good mic drop. I didn't realise you were going
Yeah,
to say that.
yeah.
Okay.
Exciting. Yeah,
Well, that is very exciting. Well, there we go.
good.
Brilliant.
All right.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, very good.
We'll see you soon.